the search databases, how they work, which means that we're going to look at how to collect literature using those databases and how to assess it. And for the collection part, I'm going to really do some searches in a couple of search engine databases so that you see how it works, and that hopefully you also feel much more confident using those yourself. And for the assessment, we have a couple of principles, rules that you could use to assess what the quality of a certain article is. And that was also one of the questions that was already in the chat. So hopefully before the next break, you have found at least some answers to that question. There's not one single answer, but we will give you some ideas how to assess the quality of an article that you found. So this means that, we are going to search in databases, and in order to search in databases, you use search terms. Now you see here two databases mentioned, and I'm going to show you both of them, Scopus and Web of Science, and I'm also going to show you Google Scholar. Now, it could well be that your supervisor or maybe the track coordinator will give you also some additional ideas for databases. So please also take those advices to heart. These are Google Scholar, Scopus, and Web of Science. There are three general databases focused on management, and there might be specific discipline-based databases that your supervisor or track coordinator might point out to you. Now, it's very important that you use these databases being authenticated as an Erasmus student, or in my case, Erasmus faculty, because that gives you much better access to these databases. You will be able to, you get more links, very often links to the full text article directly from your search. So that's very important. And it's also important because you can then save the history of what you've been doing, not in all databases, but for instance, in Scopus, Web of Science, you can actually save what you have been doing so you can come back to it later. So that also sometimes means creating an account within the database, but being authenticated as an Erasmus student is important to get full text access to articles. I'm going to show you search operators, what they are and how they work. So that's something that is very useful once you start working with these databases. And I'm also going to show you basic search and advanced search. And then there's a lot of filtering that you can do. And that filtering also helps you to funnel down from, you could say, the broad search that you started with, and then funneling into specific areas that you are interested in. You might even funnel into only higher quality journals, for instance. So that funneling is important to end up with a nice set of academic articles that you can use. So most of the time I'm really spending on finding academic journal articles. And you've just heard before the break that there's many different types of academic sources. I'm also going to show you a little bit about professional literature, but most of the time journal articles. And like I said in an answer in the chat already in the first lecture hour, the literature review that we expect for the bachelor project, I would say the majority should be journal articles. They're really the highest quality, you could say, because they are in the good journals. They have been peer reviewed and really rigorously peer reviewed. So what is in the end published in the good journals is generally also good research. For books, it might be a much easier trajectory. And once a publisher thinks they can sell a lot of it, they're already interested in publishing your book. Now, there might be some review, but not as rigorous as for a journal. So please, yes, do use other sources as well, but the majority journal articles. And that's what I'm going to show you how to use it. Now, in addition to what I'm showing to you today, the library of our university also has a guide, or actually guides, different guides that you can use on how to search for literature. And there's a link here that you can follow later on. and then also do a lot of the things that I'm showing you today. Now, what we basically do is a systematic search. So not because we are asking you to write a systematic literature review, going back to one of the first slides, but also to write a good narrative literature review. It's wise to follow some of the principles of a systematic search. So that's what we're showing you. So by using these databases and the search terms, you build a first information pool. That's the step one up here. And then you can use filters to narrow down that big pool into the exact types of literature that you would like to focus on. So I'm going to show you how to filter down. Then, of course, you need to assess what do I have. You assess the content first of all. Are they relevant to what I'm looking at? But you can also assess quality. Then at some point, you're going to analyze. And there was this question in the chat about, can I already start a search just with the word governance? Well, yes, you can go through the first steps just with the broad term governance. But then you will find that it's a very broad literature still. You might discover that within the first articles that you find some keywords that you want to focus on further, which means that you're building new filters. And you take this loop back, you apply those new filters, and you're going to narrow down. So, like I said in my answer, it really is an iterative process. You're not done with just one search. You'll probably do a very broad search at the beginning. You might sit together as a team, define what you're going to focus on specifically, and then move on and do the real search. And what comes out of that real search is then the articles that you're going to use for writing your review. And the third hour of today's lecture is really about writing the review. So this hour is about finding the sources, and the third hour is about writing the review. So let's have a look at how it works, which means that I'm going to share my web browser. And we're going to start here. So I've opened Google Scholar. This is always a nice place to start. So you see here at the top, scholar.google.com. That's where you can go in order to access Google Scholar. But I've also opened Web of Science, and it looks like this. So it's webofscience.com. And for this one, it's important to access it being authenticated as an Erasmus student, because then you can get the full access to the database. And I have also opened Scopus, and that database looks like this. Scopus was started by Elsevier, so you actually see the Elsevier logo here in the top left-hand corner. But it's not just the journals that are published by Elsevier. It's broader than that. But it started out as an Elsevier product.
And Elsevier is a publishing house, because this may not also be evident.
Indeed, yeah. So Google Scholar, Web of Science, and Scopus. Those are the three that I will start with in the beginning. Now, what I'm going to search about is, I told you in the lecture last week that my area of research is purchasing in the healthcare domain. And for instance, I study how insurance companies in the Netherlands, but also in other countries, how they contract with healthcare providers like hospitals. So I'm interested in the healthcare sector, how this contracting is being done. So I could say, well, if I want to read more about it, imagine that your bachelor project is about that topic. I could say I'm interested in healthcare contracting. Now, of course, I prepared this exercise, so it's already here as a previously used search term. But I can put in healthcare contracting, and then Google Scholar tells me that there are about 494,000 results. So you can already see that is way too many to really do to write a literature review about. But I'm just going to start with this, and I'm going to have a quick look. Product definition for healthcare contracting, hospitals. Yeah, that looks like a relevant article. I have here capitated contracting and relationships in health. Yeah, looks also as a relevant one. A very specific one, institutional racism in public health contracting. I would only read that one if that was maybe what my bachelor project was about, the extent to which there is racism in health contracting. But I'm pretty happy with the first results that I see here. Okay. Now let's do the same thing in Web of Science. So I just start with the first page. I'm going to do more in-depth searching later, but this is the first page that I see. So I can put in, again, healthcare contracting. Let's see what I get here. I click search, and I get 3,913 results. So that's way less than the 494,000 that Google Scholar gave me. But this is a much more focused set. I'm going to have a quick look. Contracts for healthcare referral services, that looks really relevant. Optimization of healthcare contracts, yeah, pretty happy with what I see here. Now, to already immediately give you a little bit of extra insight, the difference between Web of Science with only 4,000 results and Google Scholar with 494,000 results is that Google Scholar crawls across the entire web and looks for everything that looks like an academic article. And that's a very important remark that I make. They will also, Google Scholar will also pick up articles that look like an academic article, but in fact aren't. Which means that in order to assess what Google Scholar is giving you, you need to check, is it really a journal? Now, I see here the Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health. That sounds like a real journal. I see here Social Science and Medicine. That's also a journal that I happen to know. So the first hits are real journal articles. But you will see if you go down into page 10, 12, 20, 40, there's many pages here, of course, then you will also come across all kinds of other stuff that is not even an academic article. So Google Scholar just scrolls the web and presents you anything it can find. The big contrast is Web of Science, you can only, as a journal, come into the Web of Science if you've been through some vetting process. So there has been a quality check of the journal before it is allowed to be part of Web of Science. So there is already a quality filter. Even if you put in the first search term here, you already know I'm only going to get hits from journals that are vetted by the Web of Science. That's, of course, a good start. But the result set is much smaller, only 4,000. Now, recently, Web of Science has also added conference proceedings. We talked about conference papers in the first hour. So Web of Science, since a couple of years, will also give you conference papers. But again, only from conferences that have been checked on some level of quality. I'm not going to say that it's foolproof, but at least there has been some quality check. Now let's also look at the third one. So here I already had in healthcare contracting, and I can also push search. And let's have a look what Scopus gives me. Hey, an even smaller set, 1,388 results on healthcare contracting. I do a quick check. Low influenza vaccine uptake by healthcare workers. What's this? This is about the extent to which healthcare workers take influenza vaccine, the griepprik in Dutch. Compound Licodeine cream combined. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, but this is not about healthcare contracting. Let me have a quick look. This one I happen to know. Oh, that's no coincidence. My name is here. This is really about healthcare contracting. So this one is relevant, but all the four above, I don't think they're really relevant. Now, let me have a quick check. This is also interesting. You see here what Scopus has done. It has changed my search term. I didn't tell him to, but it changed it into healthcare and contracting. So I already know that it will only look for articles where it has the word healthcare in it and the word contracting, and where it should be either in the title, the abstract, or the keywords. So it doesn't search full text, it searches in the title, abstract, and keywords for healthcare and contracting. And that's also a big contrast because Google Scholar looks for these two words anywhere on the pages that it finds on the internet, and it can access the full text, so it will look throughout the complete article for these two words. The same essentially for Web of Science. Here it says in all fields, it looks for the words healthcare and contracting, and you already see here they don't have to be next to each other. But Scopus looks for healthcare and contracting in title, abstract, and keywords. And that explains why the number of hits is the lowest for this database. But why do I get these strange results? Does any one of you have any idea why healthcare and contracting will give me a paper about influenza vaccines, or this kind of cough that they're talking about, or ventilation strategies? Anyone? Can you put some ideas in the chat? I'm looking at the chat. Anyone? Citations is a suggestion by Jesse, but we know it only looks in title, abstract, and keywords. Exactly, Joaquin. I don't know whether I pronounce your name correctly, but indeed, you can contract a disease, meaning you catch the disease, and Farika has the same one. Yeah. So there's a problem with the word contracting in the sense that healthcare and contracting gives me also results that have to do with catching a disease, contracting influenza or contracting COVID. Yeah. Now, the reason I see them up here is another realization that I should be aware of. I'll give you again first Google Scholar. Google Scholar will sort everything based on relevance, plus some other algorithmic rules that I don't know exactly. I think it also takes into account how often it has been cited, but you see here that it's not the most cited one at the top. But at least there is a relevance algorithm that Google Scholar uses. The same for Web of Science. It actually says here, sort by relevance. You can see here that it has been sorted by relevance. But Scopus, if you don't give it further instructions, says sort on date newest. So indeed, 2023, 2023, these are all very recent articles that happen to have the word healthcare and contracting in either title, abstract, or keyword. So if I would then change this one to sort on relevance, and then I will probably, I see older articles up on the top, 2018, 2021, and here, does corruption and institutional characteristics of the contracting authority affect the execution of healthcare infrastructure? This really is about how healthcare is being contracted by financiers. But here, risk of contracting COVID-19. Even here, I still get some of these catching a disease. But this one again is what I'm looking for. Contracting out non-state providers to provide primary healthcare services. So now it's more relevant, not exclusively, but at least it's more relevant to what I'm really looking for. Okay, the one thing that I forgot, and I see a lot of students forgetting this, is that I'm not just interested in articles that contain healthcare and contracting. I am interested in articles that have healthcare contracting together. Yeah. So that's when you start using these quotation marks. If I really want to see healthcare contracting as a term, I should put quotation marks around it. And if I now hit search, I get only 279 results. I'm doing a much more focused search because I'm putting these quotation marks around it. I think this one was already in the previous 494,000, but I'm getting other types of articles, and I really see that either in the title, they are together, or in the article, these words are together. Yeah? So only 279 results. If I do the same thing in Web of Science, I can click on the search term, and then I can change it, I can edit it, I can put quotation marks around it, hit search, only 6 results, whoa. So now I have only 6 articles where healthcare contracting are really together. Here you don't see them together, but if I would click on the article, then somewhere here, yeah, in the keywords, the author has specified healthcare contracting. Yeah. So I'm really now searching for the two words together. I'll do the same thing in Scopus. I can change I can push edit here. So I edit the way that I'm searching. And instead of something that the search engine did for me, healthcare and contracting, but it didn't say they had to be together, I'm putting quotation marks around it. I can hit search and I have 9 results. So what do you think? Are these the 6 or the 9 that are sufficient to do my literature review? Any ideas on that? Am I now very happy that I have only 6 or 9? Because if I believe in Web of Science, I only have 6 papers to review. What are your thoughts on that? Can I now lean back and write a literature review based on only 6 articles? Probably too limited, doesn't seem like enough. It's a good starting point, yeah, I agree with you. No need to look at professional literature, and it's a great basis, but not enough. Now, I agree with those who say it's a nice start, but definitely not yet enough. What I would like to show you as a learning is that with the quotation marks, and let's have another look here at only 6 results of Web of Science. With the quotation marks, it's probably way too limited. And without the quotation marks, it's way too broad. And that's a nice trigger to show you the difference between what we call type 1 errors and type 2 errors. So I have this slide in the slide deck. And this is also the slide that always helps me remember the difference between the two. And the type 1 error is false positives. Like this doctor saying to a man, obviously a man, you're pregnant. It's a false positive. False positives are in the 400,000 Google Scholar hits or the 4,000 Web of Science hits. There's a lot that was included in the search, which is not relevant to me, about contracting diseases, etc. But with the quotation marks, I'm probably into the other area, the false negatives. I'm excluding a lot of articles that I should have in my review because they are relevant, but I'm way too restrictive. So it's like the doctor saying to this lady who's obviously pregnant, you're not pregnant. And so you always, in a literature search, you have type 1 and type 2 errors, and now you have to find some smart ways of minimizing both types of errors. So the type 1 error of false positives means that I need to be more restrictive, but I overshot. I was way too restrictive and I got into the type 2 errors, but I can avoid those by adding synonyms. I think that's also what those of you who said at this point it's too basic, and I think someone was already alluding to it in the chat. There are, of course, many other terms that I could also use to study how insurance companies are contracting with hospitals. For instance, in the way I already say it, some of the articles might be talking about hospital contracting and not healthcare contracting. And there's no author out there who thinks about Erik van Rij, who's going to do a search in 2023. They'll just write their article and maybe they just talk about hospital contracting and never use healthcare contracting. So I need to start putting in some synonyms, but that will only broaden it. And I also need to put in some terms to make it restrictive so that I can try to exclude completely irrelevant phrases. So I'm also going to show you how that works. Now, let me go back to sharing the search engines. Maybe before I do that, because now I need to know more about how the databases work, I'm going to show you a couple of things. So Google Scholar, the interface, quite simple. There's a couple of things that might be interesting here. I could start playing with a date range. Do you see that here on the left-hand side? Well, that doesn't help me for really the type 1 and the type 2 errors. It just means that if I think I do not want too old articles, I can do something here. Sort by relevance, sort by date. That's not really going to help me. Any type or review articles. Well, review articles will typically give you the type of literature reviews that Anna was talking about in the first hour, which might be helpful to also catch a couple of those, but I don't want to restrict my review to only review articles. And I'm not going to include patents because that's not really relevant. One thing that you can't immediately see is that here you also have an advanced search. Or maybe you can mute yourself. I don't know who's coughing in the microphone. But... So here with the 3 lines, I can open it up. I can go to advanced search, and there I can do more stuff to try to play with this type 1 and type 2 error. So here it says, first of all, in my first search, if I would have opened it, you would see that healthcare contracting were up here. It was searching for articles with all of the words healthcare contracting. Now, because of the quotation marks, it's looking for the exact phrase. And with this one, I could start, for instance, taking out, I don't want exact phrases, but I want at least hospital, healthcare, that stuff. I'm not going to work with Google Scholar a lot more because I'm going to show you the example in Scopus, how I further drill down. But this is the interface in Google Scholar where you can make a much more focused search if you know what you're looking for. And you can only know what you're looking for if you did a broad search, looked at the results, started to realize type 1, type 2 errors, and then work from that. Yes, thank you for muting. Here, the interface is slightly different. It's probably better if I take the big chunk first, because then I can show you more. So we're again to the 3900. And then you see here that you can filter the type of article. Now, again, review articles are literature reviews done by others. It's good to have them, but never write your lit review only based on other people's literature reviews. You can select only the open access ones, which means that you can read them full text even without a subscription, but don't base your literature review only on open access. Just make sure that you're authenticated as an Erasmus student. You get access to almost all of them. Maybe this is more interesting. You can select certain topics. And I could, for instance, do virology and exclude them. And this might help me get rid of all these contracting, influenza, and that kind of stuff. And of course, I want management to be in there. I could even say management. And if I click refine, I only get the 125 articles that have management as a topic. It might be a bit dangerous because I'm going from 4,000 to 125. I might be excluding a lot of other stuff. Probably I need healthcare policy as well. And if you click on see all, you will see that there's quite many topics to choose from. Right? It's really a long list. So you can use it. I find it sometimes a bit difficult to then click all the important ones from this list. But it's good that you know that it's there.
What I also add, Eric, is that I find from my experience that this, let's say, attachment of a paper to a topic sometimes is not really done well. I don't know how exactly it's done by databases, but sometimes even if you say filter management, you will still see something really not management. So this is not something I would really fully rely on. Yeah. So there is, most of it should be okay, but you still can miss some things that will be, potentially not in management, but somewhere else, and then you will not see them. So use with caution.
Yeah, because you're now relying on the system to have given these topic names to the articles. I think they use AI to do it, and also AI is not perfect, so you might still miss out management-related articles, although you have clicked this topic. Again, you can filter by years. You can filter by article types, so you can leave the conference proceedings out if you think you only want journal articles. Web of Science has its own categories. You can even select which universities you trust. So there's a lot you can do on this left-hand side. Publication titles, for instance, maybe your supervisor said, there's this top journal, I want you to make sure that you include a couple of articles from this top journal, or maybe he or she has given you 3 or 4 titles. If they are in this list, again, you can click on See All. You get a long list of journal articles that might help you to find articles from specific journals. Yeah, so a lot you can do on this left-hand side. The same for Scopus. Looks a bit the same. The order is a bit different, but you see author names, subject areas. You can open this one up, document types. So there's a lot of filters you can apply on the left-hand side to, if you have a large set, to narrow it down to years, institutions, journals, authors, etc. Okay, let me quickly check my exercise. We've already done.
And maybe I will add something, because I think I actually had a question that probably came in direct message, but one student was asking, is there an easy way to, for example, filter out all ERIM P or P star journals? So no, there is no easy way, but if you know which journals belong to the star level, you can basically manually click on this journal title. So it's a manual process, but you can filter out the journals that you want to look at. Yeah, and that's maybe not a bad thing, especially if you have a large number of results and you want only top quality publications, then going by journal is a relatively, I think, easy way to reduce the number.
Yeah. So
but it's a manual exercise. It will not do it for you yet. Scopus.
So it's a good trigger for me to show you indeed the list. You've seen the link on the slides, but I've also opened the page here so you know what it looks like. So ERIM is the research institute for RSM and also the economics faculty. Together we have a research institute, and we rank the journals, and some journals we call star, which is the top, the absolute top. Some get the letter P, which means primary. That's, say, the next league of journals, and some get the S, which is secondary. And a lot of journals, because there are thousands of journals out there, a lot of journals are not even on this list. So even if they are an S, you know that we've already considered them as good, but if they are a P for primary, they're even better, and if they are a star, they're really top of the bill. So the Academy of Management Review is a journal that I would still love to publish sometime later in my career. I've never managed to get in there. That's really a tough journal to get into, very high quality. Yeah, so if you know the star journals that your supervisor is interested in, or you know you want a couple of star journals in your review, you can go to this list. That's, of course, quite long. You can go all the way to page 20. They're in alphabetical order. This is an S journal. Let's see if there are some starts towards the end. Transportation journals. Yeah. And you might even be able, but I found out that it doesn't work flawlessly. You could here say, okay, I want to see only the star journals, and it should now give me a list, with only star journals. Really top of the bill journals that we consider the best of the best. So for instance here, I could have a quick look at the journals. It's called publication titles. And I happen to know that health policy is a good journal for my field. So I could click on it, I could refine, and now from the 4,000 hits, I only get the hits that are published in the journal called Health Policy. Time is flying. I wanted to show you that the way to find synonyms could be as follows. So you need synonyms in order to make sure that you don't have false negatives. False negatives meaning leaving out too many important articles. And one trick that you could use is to identify a couple of articles that you would expect to come up as a result. So maybe your supervisor has given you 3, 4, 5 concrete articles that he or she says they should be in your review or they are about the topic, and you can check whether or not they are in there. So in my case, I had a quick look at articles that I would expect in there because I've written about the topic. So this is one of my own papers that I would have expected to come up.
You're not sharing the screen now, right? So
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, that's my fault. Thank you. So here is an article actually published in Health Policy, the journal that I just mentioned. And I know that this article is about healthcare contracting, but, and it's too much for you to read now, but the word healthcare contracting or the phrase is not used in here. Well, you might say, but I see it at the bottom. The thing is, we used a space in between health and care. And for that reason only, it didn't show up in the results. So that's something you also need to be aware of. So I need to have healthcare or health space care in combination with the word contracting. Or this one, it doesn't have contracting anywhere, but it has the word reimbursement. So I need to be aware, oh, wait a minute. Sometimes these people talk about reimbursement, and what they mean is how insurance companies pay for the services that these hospitals provide. So reimbursement is another synonym I need to put in. Or this one, that I would also have expected in there, it talks about hospital insurer contracts, not literally healthcare contracting. So by having a set of articles that you know are relevant, you can learn why are they not showing up. Oh, because they don't literally use healthcare contracting, they use other words. And that's how you can build also your mind map or your relevance tree. So you need to do it iteratively. You need to have some articles that you know are relevant, then build your search string, then look at the results, then try to put in some more filters, have another look. And there's constantly checking for the false negatives and the false positives. Now, I'll show you what happens if you play with this for a bit, which I did. I'm not going to do it now, but at some point I came to this search string. Now, let me explain it to you. This one works for Scopus. What it says is, I'm looking for, in the title, abstract, or keywords, I'm looking for healthcare, or healthcare with the space, or hospital, or hospitals, or GP, which means general practitioner, but it's very often abbreviated, or it says here general practitioner spelled out, or doctor, or physician. I'll skip this one, but I'll come back to it in a second. And I look for contract, but with this star, I also catch contracting, contracts, etc. Or reimburse, reimbursement, reimburses. Or purchase, purchasing, purchases. Or procure, procurement. And with the star, I catch everything that starts with these letters, but might have other letters after it. And also paying. I can have paying for healthcare, payments, those kind of words. But I don't want them to be anywhere. I want them to be within 7 words of each other. So I catch healthcare contracting, but also contracting of healthcare. And I can play with, is 7 the correct number, or maybe 3, or maybe 5? Of course, if I put in 7, I get more false positives. If I put in only 3, I might have more false negatives. I might be excluding articles that are still relevant. Then I put in another restriction. I said, and in the title only, so this can be title, abstract, keyword, I want these words in the title. So I'm restricting it even further, because I'm expecting that if people write about it, they put one of these words in the title. And then, yeah, I'll get to you in a minute. And then I also exclude stuff. And not smart contracts, because I found out that that was in false positives. I got all kinds of blockchain articles that I don't want. And I don't want contracting within 3 of COVID, HIV, SARS, pneumonia, virus, or infection, to clear out all these infection articles. And I also wanted only articles and reviews, not conference proceedings and all the other things. So you need to learn a little bit of the language of a search engine, and then you can build these kind of search terms. I think there was someone who was about to ask something.
Yeah, there was, I think, a good question about, I know the answer, but I think it's better if you reply, because could you show where you would stop refining the healthcare example, so creating the perfect set of articles, and start reviewing them?
Yeah, so that's why I put at the top, still imperfect. You never get the perfect searching. But with this one, I was pretty happy. I scrolled through a couple of pages of results and I didn't see all these irrelevant articles. So this is where I put this in, and then I ordered them in relevance order, and I started reading from the top. And then at a certain point, I also looked for, okay, am I now hitting the high quality journals? So I put in a couple of journal filters. I did a filtering on the years just to see, okay, what has been published in the last 3 years, and not to only review those, but to say, okay, what's happening in the most recent years. So with this as a basis, I started to explore a couple of things like the most recent articles, what is in the top journals, etc. So this was a kind of the basis for doing some further exploration. And then you could say, if I have a nice set of about 15 or 20 articles, that could be a good start for my literature review. Then at some point, I go back to my relevance tree or the mind map, and I ask myself, did I cover all the topics that I wanted to cover? Because that's, of course, important. And that might trigger me to quickly do a follow-up search to see whether there's more that I should include. So it really is an iterative process in which you need to try and refine and then try again. So one more
if
thing
I may add is that each database will have different type of syntaxes, right? So Scopus works differently than Web of Science. Yeah, so you cannot say I learned once and I use it for all, but every database has actually explanation of own syntaxes inside. So if you want to search somewhere, it's good to go and understand which operators and how they work. There is explanation for everything, and that's what Eric is showing now, for example. Yeah.
So in Web of Science, if you click Advanced Search, you can get to this interface, and you see a lot of things here on the right-hand side, operators that you can use in order to build your search key. And in Scopus, it's just slightly different. You have your search, you can go to Edit. It will give you the interface to also go to Advanced Document Search. And if it now has translated my just simple search for healthcare contracting into this, but I could copy what I've just had. But for instance, I could just add and not COVID with a star because I want to catch COVID, COVID-19, etc. And then if I do a search, it will have, it has excluded one of the 9 articles because that apparently had COVID in it. And you have a reminder here what your search term was. Just quickly before the end of this hour, professional. So let's go to, I actually wanted to go to normal Google. Well, we can do it in Bing. Imagine that I put healthcare contracting here. Put it as separate words. And I already see a couple of things that I think are interesting. Yeah, why healthcare contracts are crucial, 9 types of healthcare contracts, 10 people to watch in healthcare contracting. Yeah, that all looks really nice. Maybe does it change if I put quotes around it? Let's have a look. Yes, this is interesting. The Journal of Healthcare Contracting. Now, I've never heard of it before. Let's have a quick look. And you see the cover. What do you think? Is this an academic journal or a professional journal? Just judging it by the cover. Yeah, indeed, professional journal. So just going on the web, I'm not going in one of the literature databases, but just generally on the web, that's a way to find professional literature. And this is a nice journal. If I have access to at least the abstracts or maybe the complete articles, I can read about what are the problems, the challenges that professionals have around healthcare contracting. Of course, if I've learned from the other search that I also need to include other terms, then of course I should not just look for healthcare contracting, but maybe also healthcare procurement, just to make sure that I'm not making the type 2 error in my search for professional literature. And indeed, I get more relevant articles, procurement strategies in healthcare. Yeah, looks very good. Now, something that Anna, for instance, said is look at the source. Deloitte, I would say, yeah, trustable source. So this one I would read. When I put healthcare contracting in Google, on the very first page, I found a master thesis from the University of Twente. I would not use master theses in your literature review because they have not had the rigorous check that journal articles have had. And I'd rather read this professional journal on healthcare contracting than a master thesis from a university. So they will pop up just by looking on the web. Here you have to put your quality filter on it. Yep. The Web of Science has put its quality filter on it, but the web doesn't have a quality filter.
I still would like to say that I like using master thesis because you can find references there. And that's what's good. Yeah, I would definitely use with care what is there in terms of content, but I still think it's a good way to see, especially for recent one, what the other students found, because it helps some time also to find what's relevant for you, I think. But yeah, how good the quality is, we do not know because the grade is never there. And different universities have different, let's say, grading criteria.
Yeah. One last thing I want to show before we can go for a break, that is snowballing. So let's go back to, there's a list here of 38 results. Now, this was because I filtered on health policy, but let's work with this list. Now, for each article, I can see what their references have been. So I could snowball if I would say, I trust this article as being a very good and relevant one. I know that health policy is a good journal. I might have a look at their 28 references. So these are the 28 articles that the authors refer to in their work. And I might find some more interesting stuff here. That's snowballing into the past because there can only be references that are older than the original article. But I can also snowball the other way. I can snowball into the future because here it also says there have been 5 citations to this article. So there were 5 articles that found it important enough to cite this one article that I found. So this is another way of going into the future compared to that original one and look for more potentially relevant stuff. Yeah. So do this for if in your initial search you found really a key article and you're interested in who's referring to that key article, but also which references are being used by the key article, then you can snowball both into the future and into the past.
Eric, and there was a question which I think is right on top of like what you're saying now. How do you identify if articles seminal or key? Because I think when you have certain experience on topic, that's easier. But when you're relatively new to it, how would you do that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It helps to see how often an article has been cited. That already gives you an indication whether it's seminal or not. With my experience, I would look at the author and ask myself, okay, have I come across this author more often? Has this author written good articles in my experience? So I would look at the author, I would look at the citations, I would look at the journal. If it's the Star Journal, it has a better chance for me to be called a seminal paper. So there's different indicators, and the combination of the indicators helps you to say, okay, this article is going to be key. Well-known author, many citations, good journal. That could be at least 3 things to look at. And of course, relevant. It should be, in terms of content, it should be relevant. The slides that we have for this part are only recaps of what I've shown. So they're going to be in the slide deck, but they sort of summarize what I've been showing you in real life. Is this a good moment for a break, Anna, or is there anything I skipped?
No, I think basically just to summarize, because I think you addressed also all the questions, that there is no one database that would give you both professional and academic. And academic is much more structured, let's say, way to search for. You really don't have, unfortunately, such a way to look for professional literature.
Yes.
Another question is, could you give another example of refined search input, for example? And
voor 0,1 bonus op het tentamen.
Mute, please. Mute, please. Yeah, but I think this is something maybe we can also just do it, on the beginning of the next one if you want.
Yeah.
Because I think
so the search string that I showed was actually for Scopus. If you would do it for Web of Science, the W7 that I used for Web of Science, I think you have to use the word near. So you say term A, near /5, term B. So it's these kind of tweaks that you need to know, but every database has an online manual. So you can look it up, you can see what their terminology is. The and, the or, the not, they are everywhere. They are in all the different databases. But the more specific ones like the W and the near, those are sometimes specific to a database.
Okay, time for a break then.
Yeah.
And we are back at 11.
Yeah. Okay, see
Very
you at
good.
11.
Thank